My name is Margaret, and once upon a time, life held endless possibilities for me. I was a young woman, full of ambition and dreams. When I met John, I was immediately drawn to his charm and gentle nature. We fell deeply in love and decided to embark on the journey of marriage together. In the early days of our union, everything seemed perfect. I had a stable job that allowed me to earn a comfortable income. With our combined efforts, we were able to buy a beautiful house, a symbol of our shared aspirations and a place we could call home. One evening, as John and I sat in our cozy living room, I turned to him with a smile. "Can you believe how far we've come, John? We have a lovely home and a future, full of promise." He leaned back in his armchair, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. "You're right, Margaret. We've worked hard for this, and it's just the beginning. I can't wait to see what the future holds for us." We talked about our dreams, discussing the possibility of starting a family and creating a life filled with love and happiness. John, though struggling to find stable employment, assured me that he would find a job soon and contribute to our financial well-being. As days turned into weeks, however, I noticed a change in John's demeanor. He grew increasingly despondent, unable to secure a job despite his efforts. The weight of his unemployment began to take its toll on our relationship, and I found myself shouldering the financial responsibilities on my own. One evening, after a long day at work, I sat down with John at our kitchen table, the tension palpable in the air. "John, we need to talk. I've noticed that you've been struggling to find work, and it's putting a strain on us. We need to find a solution together." He looked down, his voice filled with frustration. "I know, Margaret. I've been trying my best, but it's just not working out. I feel like a failure, and it kills me to see you carrying this burden alone." I reached across the table, taking his hand in mine. "John, we're a team. We can overcome this together. Let's explore other options, consider different career paths, or even seek professional guidance. I believe in us, and I know we can get through this." There was a flicker of hope in his eyes as he squeezed my hand. "You're right, Margaret. I've been so focused on my own disappointment that I forgot we're in this together. Let's work on finding a solution and rebuilding our lives." Little did I know that our struggles were just beginning, and the promising start we once had would soon crumble under the weight of debt and shattered dreams. But in that moment, as we sat holding hands at the kitchen table, we clung to the belief that love and determination could conquer any obstacle in our path. As the weeks turned into months, the burden of financial strain grew heavier on my shoulders. John's inability to secure a stable job became a constant source of worry and frustration. I watched helplessly as our savings dwindled and bills piled up, threatening the stability we had worked so hard to build. One evening, sitting in our dimly lit living room, I glanced at the stack of unpaid bills on the coffee table, my heart sinking. I turned to John, my voice tinged with concern. "John, we can't keep living like this. The debts are piling up, and we're barely keeping our heads above water." He slumped in his chair, his eyes filled with a mix of guilt and resignation. "I know, Margaret. I hate seeing you struggle because of me. I just can't seem to catch a break, no matter how hard I try." Tears welled up in my eyes as I reached out to him. "John, it's not your fault entirely. Life can be tough, and we're facing challenges together. But we need to find a way out of this mess. We can't keep relying on credit cards and loans to get by." John nodded, his voice heavy with regret. "You're right, Margaret. I've been foolish thinking things would magically fall into place. I need to take responsibility for our financial future." With a renewed determination, we set out to devise a plan. We pored over job listings, attended networking events, and explored every possible avenue to secure stable employment for John. I took on extra hours at work, sacrificing personal time to keep us afloat. Weeks turned into months, and despite our best efforts, John's job search remained fruitless. The weight of the debts grew, and I found myself juggling multiple jobs and barely scraping by. The strain on our marriage became palpable as the stress and exhaustion took their toll. One evening, as I returned home from a particularly grueling day at work, I found John sitting at the kitchen table, his face etched with worry. I slumped into a chair opposite him, my voice wary but resolute. "John, we can't keep going on like this. Our debts are suffocating us, and we need a way out." He looked up, desperation evident in his eyes. "I don't know what else to do, Margaret. I've tried everything, but nothing seems to work. I feel like a failure." I reached across the table, taking his trembling hand in mine. "John, you're not a failure. We're in this together, and we'll find a solution. But we need to make some tough choices. We may have to downsize, make sacrifices, and face the harsh reality of our financial situation." There was a flicker of hope in his eyes as he squeezed my hand back. "You're right, Margaret. It's time to face the truth and make the necessary changes. We'll get through this, I promise." And so, with a newfound determination, we embarked on a journey of financial recovery. We sold possessions we no longer needed, downsized our lifestyle, and sought professional advice on managing our debts. Little did we know that this was just the beginning of a downward spiral that would test the limits of our strength and resilience. But in that moment, we clung to each other, determined to face the challenges head on, and find a way to overcome the weight of debt that threatened to consume us. As the weight of our financial struggles pressed upon us, I discovered a shocking revelation that would further strain our already fragile relationship. It was a chilly winter evening when I stumbled upon a hidden secret that would leave me feeling betrayed and deceived. I had returned home early from work, seeking solace within the walls of our once happy abode. As I entered the living room, I noticed a stack of papers left carelessly on the coffee table. Curiosity piqued. I picked them up and began to sift through the documents. My eyes widened in disbelief as I read the figures and signatures etched upon the pages. It was a loan agreement, a staggering amount of $100,000 for an extravagant automobile. I felt a knot tighten in my chest as I realized that John had taken out this loan without my knowledge or consent. Heart-pounding, I rushed to find John, who was sitting at his desk, absorbed in his own thoughts. I couldn't contain the mix of anger and hurt that surged within me. John, what is this? How could you borrow such an astronomical sum of money without even discussing it with me? He looked up, a mixture of guilt and fear flashing across his face. Margaret, I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could handle it on my own, that it would be a surprise for both of us. I wanted to make you happy. Frustration bubbled up within me, my voice trembling with indignation. John, happiness isn't built on deceit and financial ruin. We're drowning in debt, struggling to make ends meet, and you go behind my back and burden us with even more financial obligations. How could you? Tears welled up in my eyes as I continued, my voice cracking with betrayal. We were supposed to be a team, John. We were supposed to face these challenges together, but you took away our chance to make decisions as equals. How can I trust you when you keep such significant secrets from me? John's face fell, regret etched across his features. Margaret, I'm sorry. I thought I could handle it, that I could surprise you and make everything better. I never meant to hurt you or put us in this situation. Please forgive me. But forgiveness was not an easy path to tread. The trust between us had been shattered, and the weight of the debt loomed over our heads like a dark cloud. We had entered a new phase in our relationship, one where the foundations of our love were cracked and eroded. In the days that followed, I found myself torn between anger and a lingering love for the man I had once believed in. We sought counseling, attempting to salvage what was left of our fractured bond. But the damage was deep, and the sense of betrayal cast a long shadow over our attempts to heal. And so, in the wake of the borrowed betrayal, we faced a crossroads in our marriage. The choices before us were daunting, and the road ahead seemed treacherous. Little did I know that this revelation was just the beginning of a downward spiral that would test our resilience and lead me to contemplate a path of revenge that would change the course of our lives forever. Amidst the turmoil of our crumbling financial situation and the shattered trust between John and me, another source of constant tension plagued our lives. The disapproving presence of my mother-in-law, Martha. She would often visit our home, her arrival always accompanied by an air of judgment and disdain. One sunny afternoon, as I busied myself in the kitchen, Martha barged in without warning, her disapproving gaze scanning the room. Her criticisms were swift and cutting, leaving me feeling small and insignificant. Why can't you keep this kitchen clean, Margaret? It's no wonder John struggles with finding a job when he has to come home to such chaos, she sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. I fought back the tears that threatened to spill over, summoning the strength to respond. I do my best, Martha. I work long hours to support us, and sometimes the housekeeping falls behind. But John and I are a team, and we support each other through thick and thin. Martha's eyes narrowed, her tone laced with condescension. You young girls nowadays don't know the first thing about being a proper wife. Your generation is lazy and entitled. You should learn to take better care of your husband and home. Her words cut deep, piercing through my already fragile self-esteem. I tried to maintain my composure, despite the storm of emotions raging within me. Martha, I love John, and I've been doing everything I can to support him. We face challenges, but it's not a reflection of my dedication or worth as a wife. I deserve respect, just as you do. Her expression hardened, and she crossed her arms, refusing to back down. Respect is earned, my dear, and you have done nothing to earn mine. If John had married someone more capable, perhaps he wouldn't be burdened with all these financial troubles. The constant criticism and belittlement from my mother-in-law began to chip away at my self-confidence. I questioned my worth as a wife and began to internalize her harsh words. The once happy home we had built together became a battleground where I constantly fought for my own sense of worthiness. As the days turned into months, Martha's visits became more frequent, each one filled with a new barrage of insults and criticisms. She scrutinized every aspect of my life, finding fault in even the smallest details. Her presence cast a suffocating shadow over our marriage, adding to the strain we were already under. One evening, as Martha launched into yet another tirade, John finally spoke up, his voice filled with a mixture of frustration and protectiveness. "Mother, enough! Margaret has done nothing but support me through thick and thin. We faced challenges together, and it's time you recognize that. Your constant criticisms only serve to drive a wedge between us." Martha, taken aback by John's defiance, faltered for a moment. She glanced between us, her stern expression softening slightly. "I only want what's best for my son. But perhaps I have been too harsh. If you truly believe in Margaret's dedication, then maybe I should reevaluate my stance." Her admission of potential wrongdoing brought a flicker of hope to my heart. I had yearned for acceptance from Martha, a recognition of my efforts and devotion. Although her change of heart was a small step forward, it signaled the possibility of a less turbulent future. And so, as the mother-in-law's disdain began to wane, I clung to the hope that our fractured relationships could be repaired. Little did I know that the revelations and actions that lay ahead would push me to the edge, propelling me towards a decision that would forever alter the dynamics of our lives. As the weight of our financial struggles, John's deceit, and the constant criticism from my mother-in-law pressed upon me, I reached a breaking point. The toxic environment we found ourselves in had become unbearable, and I knew deep within my heart that something had to change. One evening, after enduring yet another day of John's indifference and my mother-in-law's disapproving remarks, I sat alone in silence of our living room. The weight of it all bore down on me, suffocating my spirit and dimming my once vibrant optimisms. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered to myself, "I can't continue like this. I can't keep living in a loveless marriage, being treated as though I'm worthless. I deserve better." The following morning, I woke up with a newfound determination. The pain and frustration that had festered within me transformed into a fire, a spark of strength and resilience. I realized that I had the power to change my own destiny, to break free from the chains that held me captive in a loveless and toxic relationship. I mustered the courage to confront John, to lay bare the depth of my anguish and my resolve for change. As we stood face to face in the bedroom, the air thick with tension, I spoke with a firmness I hadn't known I possessed. "John, I can't keep living like this. Your lack of effort, the emotional abuse, and the constant betrayals have pushed me to my limits. I deserve happiness, respect, and a life free from this toxicity." He looked at me, a mix of surprise and disbelief etched across his face. "Margaret, please understand. I've been going through a tough time, and I've lashed out in ways that I never should have, but I promise I can change. We can work through this together." I shook my head, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "No, John, it's gone too far. I've given everything I could, and I can't keep sacrificing my own well-being for a marriage that has broken me. It's time for me to leave." His eyes filled with desperation as he pleaded, "Margaret, please don't go. We can find a way to fix this, to rebuild what we once had." But his words fell on deaf ears. The walls that had once protected my heart now crumbled, revealing a resolve I hadn't known existed. "I can't stay in this toxic cycle any longer, John. I deserve a life where I am valued and respected. I deserve to be free." And with those final words, I walked away, leaving behind the shattered remnants of a life that had once held such promise. In the days that followed, I gathered the strength to make practical decisions, to rent an apartment and begin the process of rebuilding my life, one step at a time. As the sun set on my last night in our shared home, I packed my belongings, leaving behind the painful memories and embracing a future unknown. In the quiet darkness, I made a promise to myself, to never settle for less than the love and happiness I deserved. Little did I know that my journey was far from over. The road ahead would be treacherous, filled with challenges and moments of self-discovery. But in that moment of leaving, of breaking free from the shackles that bound me, I felt a glimmer of hope and the first whispers of a strength I had never known before. After leaving behind the toxicity of my failed marriage, I found solace in the newfound freedom that embraced me. But the wounds inflicted upon me by John's betrayal and my mother-in-law's constant disapproval still stung. I realized that it was time to take control of my life and seek the justice I deserved. One afternoon, as I sat in my small rented apartment, a wave of determination washed over me. It was time for a calculated revenge, a way to reclaim my power and make a statement that I would no longer be a victim. I meticulously planned my next move, ensuring that every step I took would serve a purpose. I decided to stop paying off John's debts, recognizing that it was no longer my responsibility to carry the burden of his reckless decisions. It was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. With each missed payment, I felt a sense of liberation, a weight lifting off my shoulders. The money that I had once poured into sustaining his lifestyle would now be directed towards building my own future, one devoid of his constant demands and financial ruin. But I didn't stop there. I knew that I needed to take a stand and reclaim the possessions that were rightfully mine. So, with a sense of purpose burning within me, I made a bold move. One sunny afternoon, I drove back to the house that had once been our home, the place that had witnessed our shattered dreams. As I parked the car, I could feel the surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was the moment of reckoning. I dialed the number of a moving company, my voice resolute as I instructed them to arrive at the house and load all the furniture and appliances onto their truck. It was time to take back what was rightfully mine, to strip away any trace of the life that had caused me so much pain. John, taken aback by my audacity, rushed to stop me as the movers began their task. His voice trembled with desperation as he pleaded, "Margaret, please, you can't do this. We can't do this. We can work things out. Give me a chance to make it right." But I was resolute, my eyes fixed on the goal ahead. "No, John, it's too late for apologies and empty promises. You took advantage of my love and trust for far too long. This is the consequence of your actions." As the movers continued their work, a familiar figure emerged from the distance. It was my mother-in-law, Martha, rushing towards us, her face etched with concern. She too had witnessed the unraveling of our marriage, the pain I had endured under her son's watch. Martha's voice wavered as she confronted me. "Margaret, what is this madness? How could you take everything from this house?" I faced her, my voice unwavering. "Martha, do you know the extent of the debts that John accumulated without my knowledge? I have been paying them off, while he hid behind lies and deceit. This is my way of reclaiming what is rightfully mine." Martha's expression softened as the truth sank in. She stepped forward, a touch of remorse in her voice. "I had no idea, Margaret. I was blind to his actions and the pain he caused you. If this is your way of seeking justice, then I must admit that you are right." With the last piece of furniture loaded onto the truck, I turned away from the remnants of my old life. I had taken my revenge, not through cruelty or vengeance, but through reclaiming my power and making a statement that I would no longer be a victim. As I drove away in the car that John had once borrowed, I couldn't help but feel a surge of triumph coursing through me. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew that I had taken the first steps toward a life of independence, resilience, and self-worth. And so, with the weight of my past behind me, I embarked on the journey toward a brighter future, a future where I would never again allow myself to be defined by the actions of others. My calculated revenge had served its purpose, and now it was time for me to soar, liberated from the chains that had bound me for far too long. As I drove away from the wreckage of my failed marriage, a sense of liberation and empowerment washed over me. The calculated revenge I had enacted served as a turning point, allowing me to break free from the chains that had bound me for far too long. But there was still one last act to complete, one final confrontation that would solidify the end of a chapter in my life. With determination in my heart, I drove to the house where John had remained after my departure. It was a bittersweet moment as I parked the car, my hands steady on the steering wheel. This was the moment I had been working towards, the moment of finality and closure. I stepped out of the car and walked towards the front door. With each step, I felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness coursing through me. The weight of the past was heavy on my shoulders, but the promise of a new beginning kept me moving forward. I took a deep breath, summoning all my strength, and reached for my phone to make the call that would signify the end. Dialing the number of the moving company, I spoke with a firmness that belied the storm of emotions within. "I have arrived. It's time to load all the remaining items in the house onto the truck. This is the final act." As the movers went about their task, carefully packing and loading the remnants of our shared life, John's voice rose in a desperate plea. "Margaret, please stop this. Let's talk. Let's find a way to fix things. I can't lose you." I turned to face him, my gaze unyielding. "It's too late for that, John. The time for talk and empty promises has passed. I have given all I could, and now it's time for me to leave. This is the consequence of your actions, and it's the final act in this tragic play." Tears welled up in his eyes as he realized the gravity of what was happening. "But Margaret, I love you. I made mistakes, but I want to make things right. Please, give me another chance." A mix of sorrow and resolve washed over me as I shook my head. Love is not enough, John. Love without respect, trust, and honesty is a hollow sentiment. I deserve better, and I deserve better, and I deserve a future where I am valued and respected. The doorbell rang, signaling the completion of the mover's task. As they prepared to drive away with the last remnants of our shared life, Martha, my mother-in-law, arrived on the scene, her eyes filled with concern and regret. She approached me, her voice filled with a mixture of remorse and understanding. "Margaret, I am truly sorry for what my son has put you through. You were right all along, and I should have seen it sooner. You deserve happiness and a life free from his toxicity." I looked at Martha, her words piercing through the layers of hurt. "Thank you, Martha. Your acknowledgement means a lot to me. It's time for me to move on, to rebuild my life, and find the happiness I deserve." And with that, I climbed into the car, the engine purring to life beneath me. As I drove away, leaving behind the wreckage of a failed marriage and a tumultuous past, a mix of emotions swirled within me: relief, sadness, and a glimmer of hope for the future. The road ahead would be uncertain, but I knew that I had taken control of my destiny. I had found the strength to leave behind the toxic relationships that had held me captive, and now it was time to embrace the possibilities that lay before me. And so, as I drove towards my new home, the weight of the past began to lift, making way for a future where my worth would no longer be defined by the actions of others. The final act had come to an end, and now it was time for me to